The crash site smelled like burnt metal and broken dreams. Captain Tyler Nash lay beneath twisted steel, his body pinned and useless. Blood dripped from his shoulder and his breathing came shallow and pained. Through the broken viewport of his damaged shuttle, he could see the rust-colored sky of Kepler 442b, a planet that was supposed to be empty. The human colony had sent him here to scout for resources and establish communication systems for future settlement. Nobody had told him that danger was waiting on this world. Tyler tried to move his legs, but nothing responded. The weight of the shuttle pressed down on him like a giant hand, crushing and merciless. His communication system was broken, scattered across the cabin floor in fragments of circuitry and glass. The emergency beacon sat on his belt, just inches from his reach, but those inches might as well have been miles. He had been lying here for what felt like hours, though his chronometer said only 42 minutes had passed. The planet around him was beautiful in a harsh sort of way. Red soil stretched across endless plains, dotted with strange crystalline formations that caught the light and threw it back in strange patterns. Tall vegetation that looked almost like trees but not quite swayed in a gentle wind. The sky above was a deep rust color, nothing like Earth's blue, and two moons hung in the atmosphere even though it was still daytime. Tyler had always loved exploring new worlds, but he hated being helpless on them. He heard the sound before he saw the creature. It was a low rumbling, like distant thunder mixed with the grinding of stone. Tyler's heart began to race. He had heard stories from other explorers about the creatures on Kepler 442b. Some said they were peaceful. Others said they were deadly. Nobody had conclusive evidence because nobody had ever come back to report what they had seen. The alien warrior appeared on the horizon like a nightmare made flesh. It was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with a body that seemed to be made of hardened plates and dark exoskeleton. Its limbs were long and multi-jointed, capable of moving in ways that made Tyler's mind hurt trying to process them. In its many hands, it carried weapons that hummed with an energy Tyler recognized as dangerous. He had studied enough alien technology to know when something wanted to kill him. Tyler tried to reach for his sidearm, a small plasma pistol that hung at his hip, but his arm would not cooperate. The alien warrior had not noticed him yet. It was moving across the red soil with purpose, heading in a direction that would bring it right past the crashed shuttle. Tyler held his breath, knowing that even small sounds could give away his position. The creature was perhaps 30 meters away when it suddenly stopped. Its body went rigid and its many eyes focused on the shuttle. Tyler could almost see the moment when it registered that there was something worth investigating. The warrior began moving toward him, faster now, its weapons held at ready position. This was it, Tyler thought. This was where it ended. He had survived worse situations in his career as an explorer, but he had always been mobile, always been able to fight back. Now he was trapped, helpless, waiting for an alien blade to finish what gravity had started. The warrior raised one of its weapons, a blade made of something that glowed with inner light, and took a step forward. Tyler closed his eyes, wondering if he would have time to feel the pain or if death would be merciful and quick. Then the sky erupted with fire. 2 enormous dragons descended through the clouds, their scales gleaming like molten gold and deep crimson. They were impossibly large, with wingspans that blocked out the rust-colored sun. Their roars shook the very ground beneath the shuttle, and their eyes burned with intelligence and rage. The alien warrior shrieked and fired its weapons upward, trying to defend itself, but the dragons were faster, far faster, and their movements spoke of countless battles fought together. The first dragon, covered in scales of deep crimson, dove toward the alien warrior with its claws extended. The second dragon, golden as sunrise, circled above, raining what looked like fire and energy down on the enemy. The warrior tried to fight back, but it was clear from the beginning that this was not a fair fight. This was a practiced slaughter. A figure dropped from the lead dragon with graceful precision and landed between Tyler and the alien threat. She was tall and lithe, with skin like polished silver and pointed ears that swept back from an angular face. Her eyes were amber gold, ancient and wise beyond measure. She wore armor of some iridescent material that seemed to shift colors in the light as she moved. In her hands she held weapons that matched her dragons in beauty and lethality. This was a warrior, Tyler realized, and an expert one at that. The elf woman smiled at the alien warrior, and in that expression was pure confidence mixed with something that looked almost like sadness. She moved forward without hesitation, her body flowing like water and lightning combined. She fought with grace and efficiency, her weapons finding weak points in the warrior's armor with surgical precision. She was not fighting to overwhelm. She was fighting to end it quickly and cleanly. The alien warrior tried to retreat, but the dragons cut off its escape routes, herding it toward the elf woman like hunters working with their prey. It fired its weapons in desperation, but the elf woman was already moving, already anticipating each attack before it came. She flowed around the energy blast like they were nothing more than water, and she struck with purpose and skill. Within moments the creature fell, its blood steaming against the red soil. The elf woman turned to Tyler, and he braced for whatever came next. She approached slowly, her amber eyes studying him with curiosity and something that might have been compassion. She spoke in a language that Tyler's translation implant struggled to process, but the meaning came through clear enough. "You are hurt. You need shelter. Night is coming and this place is not safe." Tyler tried to speak, but his throat was dry and his words came out as whispers. The elf woman nodded as if she understood, and she began working to free him from the wreckage. She was surprisingly strong, moving twisted metal with ease, and her hands were gentle when they touched his injuries. Her armor seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and up close Tyler could see that it was not made of metal at all, but something organic, something alive. She helped him to his feet, supporting much of his weight, and her dragon with crimson scales landed beside them. The creature was even more massive up close, with eyes that held far more intelligence than any animal should possess. The elf woman spoke to it in her melodic language, and the dragon lowered itself, creating a sort of saddle space on its back with its wings and body. She helped Tyler onto the dragon's back, and he found handholds in the thick scales. The moment he was secure, the elf woman vaulted up behind him, and her arms wrapped around him to hold him steady. She spoke one word, harsh and commanding, and the dragon launched itself into the air. The flight was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Tyler had never been this close to such a magnificent creature. He could feel the dragon's muscles moving beneath him, powerful and controlled, and he could hear the beat of its massive wings as they rose higher and higher into the rust-colored sky. Below, the canyon system began to appear. Red rocks carved by ancient winds and water, creating a maze of passages and hidden valleys. The dragon descended into the canyon, and Tyler saw the camp. It was built into the cliff face itself, structures that seemed to grow from the stone, connected by bridges and walkways that took full advantage of the vertical space. He could see gardens carved into the rock, and what looked like water channels running through the settlement. It was a masterpiece of engineering and survival. The dragon landed in a wide open space before a cave entrance, and the elf woman helped Tyler down. She spoke again, and the two dragons moved away toward a larger cave system. She guided Tyler inside the main structure, supporting his weight, and he saw inside a space that was both advanced and organic. The walls seemed to pulse with faint bioluminescence, providing light without need for artificial sources. The elf woman helped him to a raised platform covered in soft materials, and she began to assess his injuries. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, and she produced instruments and bandages from a pouch at her side. As she worked, she spoke to him in her language, but now her words felt different, less urgent, more gentle. Tyler realized he was safe. Against all odds, after facing death at the hands of an alien warrior, he had been saved by an elf woman and her dragons. He had no idea what would happen next, but as consciousness began to fade, he felt something he had not expected to feel in his final moments: hope. Tyler woke to the sound of running water and the soft chirping of unfamiliar creatures. Sunlight filtered through an opening in the cave, casting long shadows across the stone floor. His body ached in ways he had not felt in years, but the pain was manageable now. The desperate agony that had consumed him after the crash had been replaced with the dull throb of healing wounds. He tried to sit up and found that his left arm was wrapped in bandages made from some material he did not recognize. It felt cool and slightly damp against his skin, and it seemed to be actively reducing his pain. His shoulder, where the shuttle had crushed him, was similarly wrapped. The elf woman had done a thorough job of treating his injuries. A sound from across the cave made him turn his head. The elf woman was there, grinding something in a stone bowl with practiced movements. She looked up and saw that he was awake, and a slight smile crossed her angular face. She set down her tools and approached him with a cup made of what looked like hollowed crystal. The liquid inside smelled strange but not unpleasant, sweet and herbal with undertones of something metallic. She handed it to him and spoke in her musical language. Tyler's translation implant, which he had managed to retrieve from his damaged shuttle before being rescued, struggled to make sense of the words but provided approximations. Drink this. It will help with pain. It will help with healing. Your body needs strength. Tyler drank. The liquid tasted like nothing he had ever experienced before. Sweet and sour and bitter all at once, but it warmed him from the inside. Within moments, the ache in his body seemed to diminish. The elf woman nodded with satisfaction and began speaking again, more slowly this time, allowing his implant to catch up. Her name was Lyra. She had been hunting the alien warrior for many cycles, many seasons. The creature had been killing her people's animals, disrupting the balance of life on this world. She had tracked it for months. She had watched it hunt and kill from a distance, learning its patterns and weaknesses. She had been preparing to strike when the shuttle had crashed. Tyler tried to speak, but his throat was still dry from the crash and his ordeal. Lyra seemed to understand and brought him more water, pure and clean from one of the channels he had seen running through the settlement. He drank deeply and finally managed to form words. "Where am I?" he asked. "What is this place?" Lyra sat down across from him and began to explain. This settlement was one of many scattered across the planet, she said. Her people had lived here in peace for centuries, long before any humans had come to explore the stars. They had learned to live with the land, to take only what they needed to maintain the balance between all living things. Then others had come. Aliens from across the galaxy, drawn by reports of resources and creatures they could exploit. Lyra's people had tried to hide, tried to maintain their peace, but the intrusions had continued. The alien warriors, the creatures like the one Tyler had seen, had been hunting dragons for their scales and blood, which had value in illegal markets across a dozen different worlds. Lyra had decided that hiding was no longer an option. She had trained for combat her entire life, preparing for a day when she might need to fight to protect her home. She had bonded with Emberclaw and Ash, her dragons, in ancient rituals that went back thousands of years. Dragon and elf were connected by blood and magic and purpose. They were not masters and animals. They were partners, each capable and strong in their own ways. Tyler listened to her story with growing understanding. She was a warrior, yes, but she was also a guardian and a protector. She cared deeply about her home and her world. The aliens she fought were not mindless destroyers, but calculated exploiters, taking what they wanted without regard for the consequences. Over the next several days, as Tyler's body continued to heal, Lyra taught him about her world. She showed him the gardens where she grew food, plants that were native to Kepler 442b, and others that her people had brought with them centuries ago. She showed him the water system, intricate and beautiful, that brought fresh water from underground springs to every part of the settlement. She introduced him properly to her dragons. Emberclaw was the larger of the two, with scales of deep crimson that seemed to glow in certain light. Ash was smaller and faster, her scales the color of sunrise, and she seemed to enjoy playing tricks on Tyler, stealing his food and his tools and hiding them in corners of the cave. Both dragons were clearly intelligent, clearly capable of understanding complex instructions and making decisions. Lyra explained that dragon communication worked differently than human communication. Dragons did not use words, but rather sent images and emotions directly into the minds of those they bonded with. That was why she and her dragons worked so well together in combat. She knew exactly what they were going to do before they did it, because she could feel their intentions. Tyler asked if she would teach him, if he could learn to communicate with the dragons. Lyra looked at him with those ancient amber eyes and said that it was possible, but it would require patience. Dragons did not bond with humans easily. They had learned long ago that humans were unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. But Emberclaw and Ash were curious about him. They wanted to understand why Lyra had brought this strange creature into their home. She took him to the dragon's cavern, a massive space that opened into the cliff face. The dragons were resting when they arrived, sprawled across warm stone and surrounded by the remnants of their meals. They lifted their heads as Tyler and Lyra approached, their eyes fixing on him with intense interest. Lyra spoke to them in her language, and Tyler felt something strange happen. Images began to flood his mind, not words, but pure sensory information. He saw himself from the dragon's perspective, strange and small and fragile. He saw the crash site through their eyes as they descended. He felt their rage at the presence of the alien warrior. And he felt something else too, something like curiosity and maybe even kindness. Emberclaw approached him slowly, and Tyler forced himself to stand still. The dragon's head came down to his level, and he could feel the creature's breath, hot and smelling of copper and smoke. The dragon made a sound, low and rumbling, and more images came. This time they were memories. Tyler saw battles fought from the dragon's perspective, saw Lyra as a younger elf moving through combat with the same grace and skill she possessed now, saw decades of shared experiences and trust. When Emberclaw pulled his head back, Tyler realized he was trembling. His translation implant was having trouble making sense of what he had experienced, but he understood the core of it. The dragon had shared something with him, something precious, a glimpse into a partnership that transcended species and time. Lyra was smiling when he turned to her. "Good," she said. "The dragons have accepted you. That is important because we will need your help." Tyler asked what she meant, and Lyra's expression became serious again. "More warriors are coming," she said. "I have seen signs, traces of their movement across the planet. They are hunting something, and I do not believe they are hunting alone. We have perhaps one cycle, maybe two, before they reach this settlement. We must prepare for battle." Tyler's mind raced. He was an explorer and a scout, not a soldier. He had basic combat training, but he had never fought aliens. He had never fought anything, really. The most dangerous situation he had ever faced was when a storm had forced him to land in a canyon, on a desert world 5 years ago. But as he looked at Lyra, standing tall and confident in her iridescent armor, and as he thought about the dragons and the beautiful settlement hidden in the canyon, he knew what his answer had to be. "I will help you," he said. "Tell me what to do." The training began at dawn and continued until the twin moons rose in the evening sky. Lyra was a demanding teacher, but she was also patient with Tyler's limitations. She understood that humans were not as naturally graceful as elves, that his reflexes were slower and his strength less refined. But she also recognized that he had advantages of his own. Humans, she explained, had a capacity for rapid adaptation that most species lacked. They could learn new skills quickly and apply them in unexpected ways. They had survived on their planet by being clever and resourceful, and those traits would serve him well in combat if he could learn to channel them properly. She taught him to move through the canyon system, learning the paths and the safe places in the areas where enemies could be ambushed. She showed him how to use the vertical terrain to his advantage, how to climb and jump in ways that would be difficult for larger creatures. She taught him to move quietly, to read the signs that indicated the presence of danger, to notice things that most people would overlook. Tyler learned that Lyra had been studying the alien warriors for years. She knew their movement patterns, their tactics, their strengths, and their weaknesses. The creatures were strong and durable, but they were not as flexible as elves. They did not adapt well to unexpected situations. They relied on overwhelming force and superior weapons, but if you could avoid their initial assault and move to unexpected angles of attack, you could damage them. She taught him basic sword skills, using weapons specially designed for someone his size. The swords were lighter than human weapons and seemed to respond to movement in unusual ways, almost as if they had minds of their own. Lyra explained that they were made from metal that had been treated with ancient techniques, methods that her people had kept secret for generations. The weapons held an edge for longer and were more durable than anything forged on Earth. On the third day of training, Lyra took him to a clearing in the canyon where Emberclaw and Ash were waiting. She explained that he needed to understand how to fight alongside the dragons, how to anticipate their movements and work in coordination with them. The dragons approached him not with aggression, but with a kind of playfulness. Emberclaw made a sweeping motion with his massive tail, and Lyra pushed Tyler out of the way to demonstrate how he should have moved on his own. Ash dove from above, and Tyler had to roll and run to avoid her claws, though he could see that she was pulling her strikes, not trying to actually hurt him. This continued for hours. The dragons tested him, pushed him, forced him to think and react faster than he ever had before. By the time Lyra called an end to the session, Tyler was exhausted and covered in bruises, but he was also exhilarated. He understood now why Lyra and her dragons were such formidable warriors. They had trained together, developed trust and understanding that made them nearly unbeatable. That night, as they sat around a fire in the main cave, Lyra told him more about why she fought. Her people had once been numerous, she explained, scattered across many worlds and settlements. But over the centuries, they had chosen peace and isolation over expansion and conquest. They had retreated from the stars and focused on maintaining harmony with the worlds they inhabited. The cost of that choice was vulnerability. As humans and other species had begun exploring space more aggressively, Lyra's people had been forced to watch their worlds be invaded and exploited. Some settlements had been destroyed. Others had been abandoned. Her people now numbered in the thousands where they had once numbered in the millions. Lyra had decided that it was no longer acceptable to stand aside and watch. She had begun a one-elf campaign against the alien exploitation of her world. She had killed many of the warriors sent here to hunt dragons. She had disrupted their operations and made the planet too expensive for them to continue exploiting. But she could not do it alone forever. Eventually, they would send a force large enough to overwhelm her. That was where Tyler came in. She did not yet know exactly how he would help, but she knew that he had value. His presence on this world gave them an advantage. The humans did not know about his location. If they learned that he was alive and in alliance with Lyra, it would change the entire situation. On the fourth day, Lyra took Tyler to a communication device hidden deep in the canyon system. It was constructed from materials both ancient and modern, and it was capable of transmitting messages across the vast distances between worlds. She explained that she had been waiting for the right moment to contact the human colony and inform them of what was happening. That moment, she believed, had arrived. Tyler understood what she was asking. If he sent a message to the colony, if he told them that he had been rescued by elf warriors and that an alien threat existed on Kepler 442b, everything would change. The colony would send military forces. The planet would become a contested zone between species. Lyra's peaceful world would be disrupted forever. But if he did not send a message, the aliens would continue to come, and eventually, they would overwhelm Lyra's defenses. Either way, the world would change. Tyler asked Lyra what she wanted him to do, and she told him that the choice was his. She had saved his life, yes, but that did not obligate him to align himself with her cause. He could send the message and return to his people. They would rescue him, and she would continue her lonely fight as she had before. Tyler did not hesitate. He had spent his entire life exploring the universe, seeking out new worlds and new species. In all his travels, he had never met anyone quite like Lyra. She was strong and brave and honorable, and she was fighting for something that mattered. She was protecting her world and her people against impossible odds. He would not abandon her. He composed a message to the colony, carefully worded to convey the necessary information without panicking them. He explained that he had discovered evidence of alien military activity on Kepler 442b. He had made contact with a native intelligent species who had knowledge of the threat and wanted to establish cooperation. He recommended sending a diplomatic team and a small military contingent to discuss the situation. He sent the message, knowing that it would take weeks for it to reach the colony and that the response would take just as long. But that gave them time to prepare, time to strengthen their position, time to gather allies and resources. As the message transmitted into the vast darkness of space, Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. Her amber eyes held something that might have been gratitude mixed with respect. "You have made an important choice today," she said. "Everything that comes next will be because of what you have decided. I hope you do not come to regret it." Tyler looked at her and smiled. "I will not regret it," he said. "I believe in you." Over the next weeks, they continued to prepare. The dragons were fitted with better armor. The settlement was fortified with hidden weapons and escape routes. Scouts were sent out to monitor the approach of any alien forces. Tyler settled into his new life on Kepler 442b, training and planning and learning more about Lyra's people and their incredible world. He had come to this planet as an explorer seeking resources and knowledge. He was leaving that mission behind to become something else entirely. A warrior, an ally, and maybe, he hoped, a friend to the most extraordinary woman he had ever met. The first wave of alien warriors came on a night when the twin moons were dark and the sky was filled with stars. There were 3 of them, larger and more heavily armed than the single warrior that had attacked Tyler on the day of his crash. They moved through the canyon with calculation and purpose, their weapons scanning for signs of life. Lyra had predicted their arrival almost exactly. She had positioned scouts throughout the canyon system, and when the warriors were detected, the warning spread quickly. Tyler found himself gripped by a strange mixture of fear and excitement. All the training was about to be tested in real combat. Lyra assembled her forces in a natural choke point in the canyon, a narrow passage where the aliens could not use their superior numbers effectively. Tyler stood beside her, his light sword feeling strange in his hands after weeks of training. Amberclaw and Ash circled above, ready to strike when the moment came. When the first alien emerged into the narrow space, it was almost anticlimactic. The warrior fired its weapons, energy bolts that lit up the darkness, but Lyra had predicted that too. She and Tyler moved in opposite directions, avoiding the fire while the dragons descended from above. What followed was a brief and brutal engagement. The alien warriors were strong and well-trained, but they had not expected to face not just an elf warrior and human ally, but 2 dragons as well. The first warrior fell within moments. The second tried to retreat but found Ash blocking its escape route, snapping and snarling with all the fury of a creature that had been defending this world long before the aliens came. The third warrior managed to radio for backup before Tyler's sword found a weak point in its armor. As the bodies fell silent, Lyra turned to Tyler with something that might have been pride in her amber eyes. "You did well," she said. "You moved quickly, you thought, rather than simply reacting. This is good, but the victory was short-lived." Within hours, more signals were detected in the canyon system. The aliens were sending larger forces, and they were being more aggressive. Over the next 3 days, there was almost continuous combat. Small groups of warriors would penetrate the canyon, and Lyra's forces would meet them at strategic points and drive them back. Tyler found himself becoming something he had never imagined he would be: a warrior. Each engagement taught him something new about himself and about combat. He learned that he was faster than he thought and stronger too. He learned that fear could be controlled and even used as a source of focus and energy. He learned that when you fought alongside people you respected and dragons you had bonded with, you were capable of doing things you never thought possible. But the constant battles also took their toll. The settlement, which had always felt safe and peaceful, became a place of tension and preparation. Food supplies had to be rationed because people were focused on defense rather than agriculture. Sleep became a luxury that few could afford. Lyra herself seemed to age during those days, not in body but in spirit. On the 4th day, something unexpected happened. A massive ship appeared in the sky above the canyon, so large that it blocked out the sun. Alien warriors began rappelling down on energy cables, dozens of them, far more than Lyra's forces could possibly handle. Lyra gave orders quickly and efficiently. She told half her people to move to the secondary settlement, a hidden location deeper in the mountains where they could survive if this location was overrun. She took Tyler and the dragons and positioned herself at the widest point in the canyon, where the aliens would have to come through to reach the heart of the settlement. The battle that followed was unlike anything Tyler had ever experienced. Dozens of alien warriors came at them in waves, and Lyra fought with a skill and ferocity that was almost beautiful to witness. She was everywhere at once, her weapons flashing in the light, her movements precise and deadly. Beside her, Tyler did his best to hold his ground, knowing that his survival depended on protecting her flanks while she fought. The dragons were extraordinary. Amberclaw and Ash moved through the battlefield like forces of nature, their teeth and claws and fire devastating to anything that stood against them. But even they seemed overwhelmed by the sheer number of enemies. Tyler realized with growing horror that they were losing. They were going to be pushed back and back until the aliens reached the heart of the settlement. Then something changed in the sky. A ship, a human ship, descended through the clouds. It was the rescue team from the colony, responding to Tyler's message. They did not hesitate. They came in weapons hot, targeting the alien ship and the warriors below. The battlefield erupted into chaos as human forces engaged the aliens, while Lyra's people continued to fight. In the confusion, Lyra pulled Tyler back toward the settlement. "We must get to higher ground," she said. "The humans will drive the aliens back, but we must ensure that we do not suffer more losses than necessary." The battle raged for hours. Slowly, the tide turned. The aliens found themselves fighting on multiple fronts, unable to deal with both the elves and dragons and human technology. Eventually, they began to retreat, gathering their remaining forces and firing up their ship to escape the planet. As the alien vessel disappeared into space, an uneasy silence fell over the canyon. The humans had landed in a clearing outside the settlement, and Tyler knew what that meant. His life was about to change again. He found Lyra standing at the edge of the canyon, looking out over the damaged settlement. People were already moving through the areas that had been damaged, assessing what could be repaired and what had been lost. The dragons were resting, their energy expended from the fierce battle. Tyler stood beside her and did not speak for a long time. Finally, Lyra turned to him and smiled. "You have done what you came to do," she said. "You have brought help to my people. The aliens will not return for many years, not while humans are here to watch over this world." Tyler felt something twist in his chest. He had not realized until that moment just how much he wanted to stay, how much this place and these people had come to mean to him. "I could stay," he said. "The colony could establish a permanent presence here, working with your people. We could protect this world together." Lyra's expression became sad but also peaceful. "Your people will not agree to that," she said. "They will see this world as a resource, a place to build and expand. Our ways are very different. But perhaps that is all right. Perhaps humans and elves can coexist on this world, each in our own spaces, respecting each other's territories." She took his hand and squeezed it gently. "Go," she said. "Go and speak with your leaders. Tell them that the intelligent species on this world asks not for conquest but for peace and mutual respect. Tell them that I will be watching and that any elf settlement that is threatened will bring dragon's fire upon those who threaten it." Tyler wanted to argue, wanted to say that he did not want to leave, but he understood her meaning. He had a role to play in making this alliance work, and it required him to return to the human colony and convince them that cooperation was the best path forward. He turned to look back one more time as he walked toward the human ship. Lyra stood with her dragons beside her, golden and crimson scales glowing in the light of the twin moons. She raised one hand in farewell, and Tyler felt his heart ache with the knowledge that nothing would ever be quite the same again. The shuttle ride back to the human colony was the longest journey of Tyler Nash's life, even though it only took a few hours. He sat in the passenger bay of the rescue ship and stared out at the rust-colored planet below, watching it grow smaller as they climbed into orbit. Somewhere down there, Lyra was standing with her dragons, probably wondering if he would ever return. The rescue team, a mix of military personnel and administrators from the colony, bombarded him with questions as soon as they were safely in flight. Where had he been? What had happened to him? How had he survived for so long on a hostile world? Tyler answered their questions carefully, knowing that his words would shape how the colony responded to the situation. He explained about the alien warriors and the threat they posed. He described Lyra and her people, framing them not as primitive natives but as an advanced civilization with sophisticated technology and deep knowledge of the planet. He emphasized their willingness to cooperate and their demonstrated ability to defend themselves and potentially help defend human interests on the world. The military commander, a woman named Diana Banks, listened to everything Tyler said with the expression of someone trying to solve a complex puzzle. When he finished his initial report, she asked him directly, "Are these elves a threat to humanity?" Tyler thought carefully before answering. "Not if we treat them with respect," he said. "They have already demonstrated that they are willing to ally with us against a common enemy. I believe we can establish mutually beneficial relations." Diana nodded slowly. "That matches the sensor data we collected during the engagement," she said. "The elf warriors fought alongside you against the aliens. They did not attempt to harm our forces. They coordinated their attacks with ours. It suggests either remarkable military discipline or genuine cooperation." Tyler spent the next hours reviewing recordings of the battle with Diana and her staff. He watched himself fighting alongside Lyra, watched the dragons coordinating with human gunships, watched the moment when the tide of battle had turned in their favor. Seeing it from an outside perspective made him realize just how incredible the whole experience had been. An elf warrior, 2 dragons, and 1 human explorer had managed to hold off multiple waves of alien warriors and coordinate with human military forces. When they arrived at the colony, Tyler was escorted directly to administrative headquarters. The colony commander, a severe-looking man named Robert Kingston, was waiting for him. The office was functional and utilitarian, nothing like the organic beauty of Lyra's settlement, and Tyler found himself feeling oddly out of place in his own civilization's structures. Kingston questioned him for hours, asking for every detail of his experience. Tyler provided everything he could, though he found himself leaving out certain details. He did not mention the personal connection he felt to Lyra. He did not mention the moment when she had taken his hand and asked him to go and speak with his leaders. He did not mention the pain he felt at being separated from her. What he focused on were the strategic advantages of an alliance. The elves knew the planet better than any human could. They had technology and resources that could enhance human settlements. Most importantly, they could help humans defend against the alien threat that had proven so dangerous. By the third day, Kingston and the Council of Administrators had made their decision. They would send an official diplomatic team to meet with the elf representatives. They would attempt to establish a formal treaty that would govern relations between human and elf territories on the planet. Tyler was chosen to be part of that diplomatic team, which did not surprise him. He was the only human who had direct experience with the elves, and who had proven capable of communicating with them effectively. 3 days later, he was back on the shuttle heading toward the planet, this time as an official representative of the human colony. The diplomatic meeting took place in a neutral area of the canyon system, a wide clearing that Lyra had selected for its strategic neutrality. The human delegation arrived by shuttle while Lyra appeared on foot, with a small group of her warriors and both of her dragons. The negotiations were formal and careful at first. Each side presented its interests and concerns. The humans wanted access to certain mineral resources and the ability to establish larger settlements. The elves wanted assurances that human development would not impact their territories, and that the aliens would be driven from the planet completely. Kingston, speaking for the humans, proposed a division of the planet. Humans would develop the northern continent where resources were abundant, and the terrain was more suitable for human habitation. The elves would retain control of the southern regions and the canyon systems where their settlements were concentrated. Neither side would cross into the other's territory without permission. Lyra listened carefully to the proposal. Through Tyler, who served as translator, she asked questions about enforcement. What would happen if humans broke the treaty? What if elves violated the boundaries? Kingston acknowledged that both sides would need to maintain military forces to enforce the treaty. Tyler watched as Lyra considered this, her ancient amber eyes thoughtful and serious. He could see her calculating, considering whether this was truly acceptable or whether it represented too great a risk to her people. Finally, Lyra spoke. She said that her people would accept this treaty, provided that the humans also agreed to help defend against any future alien incursions. If other enemies came, humans and elves would stand together. The alliance would be more than a territorial agreement. It would be a true partnership. Kingston agreed to this condition. The two leaders signed the treaty using both human and elf legal documents. It was historic, Tyler realized. For the first time in recorded history, two alien species were establishing a formal diplomatic relationship and committing to shared defense. As the formal ceremony concluded, Tyler found himself standing beside Lyra, while the administrators and warriors began the process of working out the details of implementation. She looked at him with something that might have been gratitude mixed with a deeper emotion that he could not quite identify. "You did this," she said. "You brought us to this moment." Tyler shook his head. "You did this," he said. "You fought for what mattered. I just helped you find allies." Lyra smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face and made her look younger and more hopeful than she had looked since they first met. "In our culture, we have a saying," she said. "Strength and honor are what define a person, not their species. You have shown both, Tyler Nash. I am honored to call you friend." The words meant more to Tyler than he could express in any language, human or elf. He had come to this planet as an explorer seeking knowledge and resources. He was leaving as something far more important, a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of what could be accomplished when beings of different species chose cooperation over conflict. Over the next months, Tyler made multiple trips between the colony and Lyra's settlement, facilitating communication and ensuring that both sides honored their commitments under the treaty. Slowly, a productive relationship developed. Humans and elves began trading knowledge and resources. Human technology combined with elf knowledge of the planet proved beneficial to both sides. But more than that, Tyler found himself drawn back to Lyra and her world. He spent more time in the canyon than he did in the colony, He trained with Lyra's warriors and flew on the backs of dragons. He attended the festivals of her people and learned about their history and their ways. A year after he first crashed on Kepler 442b, Tyler formally requested a transfer. He asked to be assigned to the diplomatic mission permanently, based in the Canyon settlement as the official human liaison to the elf community. The colony administrators approved the request without hesitation. The day he moved his personal belongings to a structure the elves had prepared for him in their settlement, Tyler stood once more with Lyra watching the twin moons rise over the canyon. She took his hand, just as she had on the day he left to speak with the colony leadership. "I faced death from an alien warrior," Tyler said, repeating the words that had become almost a private joke between them. "And now I have found something far more valuable than survival." Lyra squeezed his hand. "What is that?" she asked, though he suspected she already knew the answer. "Purpose," Tyler said, "a place where I belong, and friendship with someone remarkable." The dragons roared from their cavern, and the stars shone down on a new chapter of history unfolding on a distant red planet where two species had learned to stand together against the darkness.